So we've got two enormous ISPs in both Bell and Rogers here. So
one thing I say, piracy is an issue, is obviously a multifaceted and very difficult issue. Where we, from a media standpoint, kind of take responsibility and respond to it is by creating experiences on our platforms that are better than those sources. So if you come to much.com to watch a show, you're going to see it in HD video. It's going to be layered with all types of social, community, all of those elements to make it better than watching it at less than 720p on a pirating site. The second thing is that piracy is where pirates hang out is a great place to find fans. So one great example is HBO Go. If you try to go search and go to Sidereel or Surf the Channel or any of these sites and look for an HBO show, you won't see that link anymore on Mega Video or what have you. You'll see the HBO Go embedded player. So they're going where the audiences are. Rather than fighting against it, they're swimming with the current and creating a compelling product that is everywhere that they want to be. Because ultimately, what anyone that pirate or kind of
but Go requires authentication to either of your cable subscriptions.
I would say
so. It doesn't necessarily satisfy the demand.
So
I think
my response to you, Kevin, would be that it is a bit of all the above, because it depends on the product, it depends on who the rights holder is. Him being able to stream HD quality of content on MTV, I'll tell you from a broadcast perspective, it is usually the studios that are holding us back from the quality that we can actually present to the audience, so that it's not as good as TV. We have limitations on DRM. We have limitations of when we can put the content online to compete. We do not compete with BitTorrent. Even if we have to hold back for 48 hours with content from NBC because first window goes to iTunes, we're going to be now 48 hours behind what the BitTorrent file for that show was. And the same thing is happening on our VOD platforms. We have to wait. We're handheld. So those elements. That's an example. Many of the American IP and or the folks that own things like Pandora or Spotify or Hulu, they're all examining what they can do in international territories. And so when we do get rights, we often get non-exclusive rights. We're at the beck and call. So it depends on the product, depends on the service. To your point of, as a consumer, it is incredibly easy also to be a pirate and to exemplify yourself and say, oh, it's not really piracy. It's a very difficult moral question for us, and we have to do our best to try to compete, as Chris says, by we are doing more and more social viewing. We've launched an app for City TV. It's called Social Stream, to try to engage you to be using our app while you're watching the live broadcast to augment the linear live presentation of a show like The Bachelor, and so that you can chat, you can watch what people are twittering, you create a compelling application to co-view with. These types of things. In the previous panel, I'm sure we had to dip out, but I'm sure Nick talked about what we're doing with InGamer to try to emphasize our fueled by fans mentality on Sportsnet, where we're trying to say not only do we want you to watch the game, but we want you to engage on our platform and do some fantasy pool and some engaging gamification. It's our responsibility to put that stuff forward to make that product more compelling.
And that will compete with the simplicity and zero cost of acquisition.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure we get to this question in the front row.
Thanks. My question is mostly, I guess, for Chris and Pary. I think it's really great that broadcasters think of themselves as curators and still having a place in content delivery. My question, I think, is with changing consumption patterns. How do Bell and Rogers measure success of a property? If, say, something does really well online and you get like crazy streaming views, but the broadcast numbers are maybe a little bit softer, how does that play into the assessment of the success of a property on all platforms?
Well, we were talking about this earlier. coming from a digital perspective within an organization, it's certainly been a tough series of years to be the flea on the tail of the dog. I think one way of responding to that, rather than looking at what digital's share of revenue is to focus on how digital enhances broadcast. So that's certainly one thing. Working with the digital teams where we've gained respect and momentum within the organization. What is challenging, and the music industry faced it, and many industries are kind of having to reevaluate themselves as consumption patterns change, as people start streaming movies on a TV rather than walking down the street to Blockbuster. Those companies need to rethink how they serve the customer in the first place. And the difficulty is you have one business line that is decreasing and that you want to defend, and you have the new one that you either embrace, which is undermining your initial business. And I think it's ideally the goal is an orchestration, and Netflix is going through this right now, actually, taking that example, where they increased the price of the subscription package with the DVD home service and the streaming, and the consumers reacted violently right away. Well, not violently, but pretty darn near close. So it is an orchestration between those business lines, which is certainly a challenge within an organization.
I think the biggest transformation is that broadcast companies are not. I'll use Sportsnet as an example, and we're growing through this, but we are no longer Sportsnet television. We are a Sportsnet brand. And it's just a little thing, but it's a really major difference in that if we aspire to be the #1 sports brand in Canada, and that's going to be through radio, through our magazine, through our online and mobile. And so being able to understand the value of it's not going to be, we're not going to have one GRP that's going to measure our readership through our magazines and our audience online and how many uniques we had on iPad or mobile. We need to distinguish the value of what each audience member is for the different platforms, but recognizing we're all working towards an engagement of a brand.
And so brand equity and community size becomes an important metric, and social influence, so that you may have 6 or 7 digital products around a brand. You need that kind of confidence that if you head down and launch a new initiative, that you can migrate that audience, that they're hungry for the next thing that you roll out.
I want to know if Trevor is sort of seeing that. So in terms of creation of community around some of these mobility and community, then driving up into sort of let's just say more high fidelity forms.
I mean, yes, absolutely.
Hey, simple answer.
Yeah, simple answer. And I think what I think. Well, let's leave it as a simple answer. I had something else to say. That I was gonna.
Okay.
I'll wait for another in.
No, it's okay. I'm calling on you.
But your product is powered by community, right? If people aren't talking, then your product doesn't have value. Your product is based on how much people kind of talk within it. So
yes,
it's pretty important, yeah.
Wow, so this is
two
sort of
single-word
interesting.
answers.
Really, you've gone to the yes or no. So the question becomes: is that how all media? I mean, I think the question was, how are you assessing it? And by the way, Chris, I thought it was pretty funny because your job performance review, as the person who's supposed to glue digital to everything else inside of that company, is probably exactly what he was asking. How are you assessed in terms of your ability to do that? But you're saying, like, if there's no conversation, if there's no activity, and if that isn't, not even necessarily geometrically, but increasing it, is that how all media will be?
It comes back to that voice, the voice of the audience, the democratization of content. The thumbs up and thumbs down is now it is being more relied upon the audience on all platforms. So if you do well on TV and you bomb online, is that going to mean your show's canceled? There's no formula. If the inverse is there, I mean, you do have history like Gossip Girl and Arrested Development and some programs that have had a groundswell of support through social pressures to be relooked at. And that will continue. The power of the mob mentality, millions of Facebook followers have weight.